Thank you for being here and giving me the opportunity to talk to you about what the Occupational Disease Action Plan working group on noise is doing. It was led by Michael Russo, who deserves all of the credit for the leadership coming up to this point of what the committee has completed. And I have the honor of now chairing that particular committee and moving it forward. Out of the, initially at the beginning of the meetings that took place in 2016, we looked at all of the different issues that are out there in relation to occupational disease and compounds that are creating issues, and noise gravitated to the top of that particular list, followed by allergens and irritants and diesel exhaust. And I was kind of surprised because noise isn't anything new within the work environment, but there's a lot of interest, and the statistics bear it out in relation to the number of people who are still being affected adversely by noise exposure within the work environment. And I realize that there is a latency component to it, but there's still a lot of workplaces when you look at statistics and data on vulnerable workers. And it's close to 6 million workers out of about 11 million who are exposed to noise, who are still vulnerable to noise-induced hearing loss and the consequences of that. And this is some of the information. Had to keep up with Paul showing us some information about numbers on hearing loss in Ontario. And this is from the WSIB looking at noise-induced hearing loss. And you can see that there are quite a number of claims that still do exist, and they haven't reduced. The Action Plan Committee, the working group, actually came together, and these are some of the logos of the members who are on the committee. It seems like there's a lot of occupational hygienists as well as marketing staff who have come together for this particular committee, and we work in tandem in looking at some of the items that have come up in solutions that we've come up with. And it's not like the working group is unique in precipitating some of these activities. Each one of these organizations are doing their own, have their own initiatives and work associated with this. It's just that the word that could be used for this particular committee is it's a catalyst. It's a catalyst for bringing people together with common interests and creating a system-wide energy around these particular issues. And that's, I think, where we get the greatest benefit. Each of us working independently, but then coming together on these type of issues and working in a coordinated fashion. So some of the goals that we were set forth with, and this was agreed to by the larger implementation group, was to raise awareness within the population of both workers as well as employers to do something about these particular issues. Looking at education and training and how to bring that about, and there's some creative ways that we're there. System coordination, which is one of the biggest issues here in bringing everybody together, and seek new ideas and avenues to get the information out. So we were tasked with this in late 2016, and surprisingly, we were told that, well, noise is the one that needs to come out first and do something with it. So the group got together, and there were all sorts of great ideas that came out the first meeting. It's like, wow, yeah, we should get notoriety and publicity by maybe having some movie stars involved, some TV personalities. And then we talked to Stephen and said, well, there is no budget for that. You have zero budget, so move on. Look at some other ideas. And so a lot of ideas came together, and what I'm going to talk to you about are those things that were distilled and that we made come to reality. So we had to select and tag team on another event that was taking place. And surprisingly, how many events there are out there with respect to noise. And the one that we decided that was close enough to the beginning of the year to get some notoriety was the International Noise Awareness Day. So that was our target date, April the 25th, and everything up to that had to led up to that particular date. So we looked at social media as one avenue, perhaps, of getting information out. And this was a coordinated way of coming up together with phrases and wording that we would all use, so that if you heard it on the news or you looked at it on somebody's newspaper or website, you'd see similar type of wording and information being distributed. So the working group used, each of these individuals then went back to their respective organizations, and they taught, and they were, again, the catalyst for their organization to get the message out. So working with their marketing group, working with the other powers that be within their particular organization to coordinate and ensure that the information was disseminated. And so that was achieved through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, e-news, variety of newsletters, their respective websites, during meetings that they were having, and publicizing this information, that the noise and the key messaging that came out of that. There's also another very interesting thing that was alluded to earlier in the conversation, which was noise, or the crowdfunding of information. And this was an initiative that John Odick took on, and it was great because using latest technology of noise apps and trying to get that in the hands of people who could actually be able to provide data back to the group. And it was a preliminary trial that was done with that, and I think there's greater success that can be achieved with that over time, provided the information is given out to people, and they know how to use the equipment, and how to do a noise survey, et cetera, and providing a little bit of background to that. I think there's a great opportunity to get information from a variety of different industries. Another, I don't know if you noticed in the first slide that I had up, there's a logo of, it's not called a logo apparently from our marketing people, it's called a word mark. And the word mark, and this is an evolution. I thought, well, you just create this little logo thing and you put it out there. But there are a lot of, every little word had to ensure that it made sense to people. And so finally, the final iteration was prevent noise. Now with the little speaker symbol with the, I should have actually put that in every single slide, but I didn't. So that's a word mark that you will see, and this is nothing new again. There's also that the ergonomists had done that with another action plan committee. Work shouldn't hurt, and you'll see a kind of similar theme with the red and the black lettering with the white background. There's also the thought of what else can we do to provide information, and this is a kind of an interesting document because it's a document in itself. However, other people are also using it. The WSIB was interested in using some of this information of 5 steps to do something about noise. Not just learn more about noise, but do something about it. That's it back in the work environment, and although it's not a final completed document, it's available to the system partners who want to be able to access this particular piece of work that was put together by the team, and is available to you as well. The working group can't take credit for these other 2 items. That's why I kind of separated them with the gap, because it almost seems like they were happening in tandem or in sequence with respect to what we were doing. Although I'd like to say, yeah, it was because of ODAP and our working group that they did this. No, the reality is the Ministry of Labor already had an initiative going, and an all-sector initiative last year in relation to noise, which is was a first, I believe. So we're waiting for the data to come out with respect to what impact that had within the work environment. The WSIB, I like this particular piece of software. I don't know if anybody saw it. How old are your ears? Did anybody try that? Yeah, I did. I was very impressed because my ears are 10 years younger than I am. And so it's like a little hearing test. That's why I like it, yeah. It's like a little hearing test, and it's more for awareness, I think, rather than, this is an audiogram and, to precipitate action again. And I think younger people should actually be here using this after they've used their headset and seeing how it actually affects their hearing as opposed to an environment without having used their headset. So for 2018, the energy took on a little bit more, and so we decided to do webinars. And it was not just one webinar that we're going to do, but a series of them, and there'd be a logical sequence. It was intended to follow the 5 steps, but there was a slight change and over time that took place with respect to what was feasible. And on March 2nd, once again, International Noise Awareness Day, we took advantage of that to get the messaging out. And then there were the webinars associated with it. There was a series of 3 webinars. One was on March 2nd with Mark Cousineau from the Ministry of Labor talking about legislation, and it was very well received. April 25th, we did another one on with John Odick, looking at a variety of different issues, including the assessment of noise within the work environment. And the final one was a recorded webinar, which is we were trying to get it on, and hopefully with getting into the Prevent Oc Disease website, and so that it's there for posterity, but also for people who couldn't attend, because the second webinar got so full that we had to tell system partner participants not to log in, because we wanted to open to everybody else who wasn't part of the system, and because they could get that information quite easily from within their own organization, and we wanted the guests to have first dibs at that. And on the September 28th, Michael Russo from IHSA and Warren Clemens from WSPS were involved in creating this presentation, and very well received. And I'd like to show you some information about the survey that was done after that, and what the results were. Oh, as well, the WSIB has another initiative looking at, I think more in the sense of awareness, looking at annoyances of sounds, and so you can actually listen to what these sounds are like, to precipitate action, hopefully again, to go in and take a closer look at it and be more aware of why we need to prevent noise exposure within the work environment. So this is the results from the webinar that took place. It's quite interesting with respect to the number of people who logged on, the number of people who actually completed the survey. And so this is the data that was gleaned from that. 67% of the people were from the OHS managers and coordinators, because this was more of a little bit of a different approach to doing noise assessments and the details that would be needed for that. Most of them were on joint health and safety committees, and 57% of them had a hearing loss prevention program in place. But what were they going to do with that information was even more interesting, because they said they'd go back and improve their hearing loss prevention program, or go back and review the controls that they had in place, and go back and perhaps evaluate what they have in the way of noise within their work environment. So there was, the good thing was they're going to go back and do something with that information, not just gain information and so be it. So some of the key results associated with that was, I highlighted the key words with respect to promoting key messages, and there was a coordinated way of doing that and reaching approximately 127,000 people with the tweets and the announcements that were made, and what people logged into and took a look at. And it wasn't just the ODAP members going in repeatedly and looking at these pieces of information, right? I'm hoping that other people did too. And aligned messaging, that everybody was looking at this, right? That everybody was saying the same thing and getting the message out, and so is a consistent messaging associated with it. And the 3 webinars, I think, reached over 250 people who were able to attend. I think they had to increase the number of participants that were allowed to log in because of success associated with these 3 webinars over time. And the strength that is associated with this is all the system partners were involved in working together and improving. And so this afternoon, I hope you participate in how further we can go with this particular aspect, what more we could do to get the messaging out, or different avenues, and get some creative ideas to feed back and provide information that the working group can act on and move this forward. But thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, some working group members here as well, but this afternoon would be a great opportunity, if you don't mind, to feedback and provide your expertise and your knowledge and your ideas to move this forward. Thank you.